All right, so I'm pulling up the article here on CanesInSight, reviewing the classes, a class of 07.
Yeah, so this is a series that we've been doing, which is just kind of going back from all the Coker classes, the Shannon classes, the Golden classes, the Rick classes, all the way through the Diaz classes to compare, kind of see, now that we've had time to reflect, we've seen how these careers of some of these players have ended up, right? We've got time. We go through these classes. They're like the most important thing in the world when you're still recruiting, and then you move on to the next class. Now that these classes have really kind of settled, you know how they played at UM, you know how they played at the next level if they got there, you know how things turned out. So I want to just go back now with the benefit of hindsight and look at these classes and see what we can learn from this exercise. So we've gone through the Coker classes. We saw the dramatic drop off in talent. We saw that the classes were top heavy at first. They'd have a Pro Bowler up top, and then no one even helped at all. Eventually, there wasn't even a top, right? So the Coker classes really dropped off. Now we are shifting gears to the Shannon era, and I got to say, I have a more appreciation for Shannon's talent acquisition when I did this exercise, especially compared to Coker, which preceded it. Still wasn't perfect. And of course, there were a lot of coaching issues. But I think Shannon, when you do this, again, I have more an appreciation for him. So this was the transition class. Coker got fired in November. Shannon took over. And Coker left Shannon with nothing, right? So he basically started from scratch, middle of the recruiting process. He was the DC, so he had some relationships, but this was a transition class. Those are hard. I look at the 4-year winning percentage, a stat I do for every single class, which is you take the class's 4-year winning percentage and project it 4 years. So let's say it's the class of 03, 04, 05, 06. You look at the Miami Hurricane seasons there to calculate the winning percentage. Good way to just kind of see how a class can maybe impact the future. This is the first year, this class, where the winning percentage did not drop. It had been dropping 10%, 10%, 5% since the beginning of the Coker era, taken over for Butch Davis. It was 88% when Coker took over, dropped all the way to 55%. So Coker gutted what happened. But Shannon stopped the bleeding. Zero change here with this class. Smaller class, 19 enrollees, but you had 6 NFL players, 303 NFL games between those guys, and 4 day 2 picks, second, third round. And you go through the list. I think this really was a good job by Randy Shannon to stop the bleeding. You had Alan Bailey from Sapelo Island. P, were you following recruiting already at this time?
Yeah, I said on a last week's show that 08 was like the first full year I was like into it. I was on message boards, like reading. It was Kane Sport was what I was reading. But 07 was, I definitely remember a lot of bits and pieces of this class. I remember Alan, obviously Sapelo Island, the stories of how they had to go, recruit him pretty much, and how, many people lived, or little people lived on the island, and their way of life. And then I always remember everyone saying about Robert Marve, Mr. Football, that he broke all of Tebow's records, right? That's what I heard about him a lot. And then Greg Cooper was one of the first recruitments I remember following, as well, as he was like the number one, what they call it, all-purpose back is what they had them ranked as at the time. So I remember, just being a huge fan of his highlights, and of course at Miami as well.
A good memory, man. So with Alan Bailey, what was interesting about that recruitment is from Sapelo Island. So this is like an island off of Georgia where really it was the contact with the mainland was limited. You had to get there by boat. So
ferry, yeah.
Similar to the Geechee subculture in South Carolina, where a lot of African traditions are maintained because the isolation for so many years from mainland United States. So it's a unique culture there. He talked about eating raccoons and stuff when he was getting recruited. Clint Hurt did a really nice job. Who's now defensive coordinator. Where's Clint Hurt, the defensive coordinator?
Is it he's Seahawks? Is he still with the Seahawks? I think he is.
Is he a D-line coach?
No. Yes, he was the D coordinator with the Seahawks, but he's the guy who's basically Jalen Carter's. He reins him in for the Eagles. Yeah, well, he has a great job with the Eagles right now. He paid very well to coach that room.
Well, he did a great job recruiting Alan Bailey, again, from an area where you would normally think SEC. This guy was a linebacker in high school, starts off as a linebacker in Miami, eventually moves down from DN, then ultimately D-tackle. Great player. Played 133 NFL games, so made a lot of money in the pros. When you look at those, that's why I use his NFL games marker, because Pete, you know how ruthless this talent evaluation processes and the pros that like just to get on the field, you have to check a lot of boxes, right? There's a lot of opportunities to get cut. So I like to see, who is able to get through that process and get on the field. So that's why Alan Bailey, 133 games, big time player. Doug Wiggins was the Dade County Player of the Year, quarterback corner out of, or quarterback safety out of North Miami Beach. We had just lost the year before, a couple years before, EJ Biggers, who was basically like same as Doug Wiggins. He was a quarterback athlete, goes to Western Michigan, ends up being a starting NFL corner. We're like, all right, we missed out on the Dade County Player of the Year with Biggers. Now we're not going to miss it with Wiggins. Wiggins wasn't as fast as Biggers, didn't make it. Robert Marve, Brian with a comment here. I talked with Robert Marve at the 07 spring game, got a bad vibe immediately, and you were in trouble. Marve, like you said, Pete, broke all the records in Tampa. Tim Tebow's records for Tampa Plant, was committed to Ole Miss, opened up recruitment, so Miami was able to slide in. It seemed like a perfect marriage. Then right away, he gets in a car accident with Jermaine McKenzie and a couple other guys before he enrolls. He's out for the year, red shirts. During his red shirt year, or at least in the summer after his red shirt year, he punches a window trying to get away from cops. It wasn't like a major crime, but when your quarterback is breaking his hand trying to get away from cops, it's like, okay, now we got a problem. So with Marv, I say he started the tradition of quarterbacks getting in trouble at Miami. You had Marv, Cannon Smith, I believe, had some issues. Ja'Cory Harris was clean, but he got suspended a game for the Shapiro thing. Kevin Olson was a disaster. I guess Kevin Olson. Yeah, so Kevin Olson was after this. So Kevin Olson got extremely serious charges against him. He's cleaned up his life. Apparently, he's working with his brother in the broadcast. But I mean, that was a nasty situation with him. Jaron Williams, we know about his issues. Cade Weldon got suspended. Nkosi Perry got suspended. I mean, these are quarterbacks, Pete. So the fact that so many quarterbacks got in trouble, I think when you look at that in retrospect, you say, of all the issues we can point to as to why Miami declined, put that one close to the top, because when your quarterback's getting suspended, your culture is cooked. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
Lee Chambers, highly rated player at Mississippi, good speed, probably too small, I think was the issue there.
32? He wore number 32?
Yeah, there we go. He was just the size was an issue there. Greg Cooper, you mentioned, great player for Miami. Horrible injury on the turf in Orlando, the old Citrus Bowl. That's since been fixed, but really ruined his career. And that's one of the worst injuries, I think, as a UM fan, seeing his career go on that stupid field. Harlan Gunn, big-time power player from Nebraska, ended up playing a few games in the NFL. Chris Perry never made it. Damian Barry, good short yardage back out of Belglade, practice squad player for Baltimore when they won the championship. Jermaine McKenzie, same as Chambers, never had the size, physical strength. Orlando Franklin, probably the best player, I think, from this class. Maybe you say Alan Bailey, but Orlando Franklin was a monster. A Jamaican, Canadian, moved to South Florida, signed with the Canes, started right away or played right away, ended up starting in the NFL, second-round pick. And then DVD, a speedster from Miami Pace, Monsignor Pace High School, length, speed. The weight was the question with him, but ultimately got drafted in the third round after tearing up the combine. Any memories on those guys?
Yeah. I mean, DVD was always the speed. It was always skinny, but speed. And Orlando Franklin now should mention that he's calling games for ESPN as well. I think he called, what game did he call this year that Miami fans actually weren't too happy with him because he had said something about Cam Ward after the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, Damian Barry, we brought him up the other day. He was actually, it's funny because he's one of those guys that when you look back on these classes, like there's no cliff notes about him here, but he had a good career at Miami. Like it turned into a really solid contributor at the time. And I kind of want to go back and look at, after you're done with all this, like how many of these guys maybe didn't make it to the NFL, but were valuable players for Miami still.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up. So the answer is not that many, which is one of the reasons why I focus so much on those NFL guys. But I would say when you talk about this class, you had more than usual, right? So you had Damian Barry was a productive player. Greg Cooper was an extremely productive player. Tyler Horn down the road, when you get down this list, who was like a no-star when Jeff Stoutland found him. He was second team all ACC. So there were a few of those guys.
I think we had Tyler Horn. We had Tyler Horn on the show years ago a few times. He was a great guest. Maybe we should try to find him, see if he still
Does
wants
he
to.
write children's books? Is that him?
Yeah,
Yeah. He writes some good children's books about being a cane. I got to get one of those now that I got my kids. Although they might be too old now. Now Eli's already reading like Athlon Sports and all the other ones. We go up a little bit, Pete. So rolling up now. Here are the 3-star players: Sean Bree McNeil out of Dallas, Texas, speedster,
transfer to SMU. Right?
Transfer to SMU. Hankerson, talk about probably the best evaluation in this class. 3-star player out of St. Thomas, a heavily scouted school, but you still get him as a 3-star. Remember that the story in this class was Deontay Thompson, right? Hankerson really ended up being better than Deontay Thompson. 41 NFL games, would have had more if he didn't get hurt. 3rd-round pick, set all kinds of records at Miami his senior year. And then also after his injury, shifted more to the coaching side, is now wide receivers coach, not for some high school or college. He's the wide receivers coach for the San Francisco 49ers in the National Football League. So shout out to Leonard Hankerson.
Which the history of the receiver coaches there, I think, is pretty good, going on to do big things, right?
That's right. Yeah. So really impressive there. Adewale Ajomo from Hialeah. He played a game in the NFL. Physically good guy. Physically strong. Had some issues.
What's your lasting memory of him? I'll tell you what mine is.
What, getting his jaw broken by that walk on and missing games? Yeah, and he had some things. He had some things with like jet skis or something. But he was a pretty good player.
Yes, that was recently though. That was after his career. Miami.
Kane Farquharson, that's right. One of the best names ever. Never really had the separation at the college level. Jared Campbell, Calais, his brother, physical player. He's actually a comedian now. I see him on TV doing all this kind of stuff. So he's doing big things in media. RIP to JoJo Nicholas from Homestead. Solid player. Had a car accident here by my house here in Miami Beach. I mean, just a tragedy, man. I hate there's too many RIPs in these workups, it sucks. The 2 guys that Shannon got there were like straight 2-stars, were Tyler Horn out of Memphis and Daniel Adderley out of Greenville, South Carolina. Adderley didn't do anything, but Horn, who was like at a private school in Memphis, Stoutland found him, ended up being a really, really good player for us as a center. Stoutland, this was Jeff Stoutland, who, when we say Stoutland, we're talking about the number 1 offensive line coach on the planet now with the Philadelphia Eagles. He was our offensive line coach at this time. This was his first class. So, Franklin, NFL player, Harlan Gunn, NFL player, Tyler Horn, all ACC. So Stoutland wasn't messing around.
It's wild how many, and I can't say I remember what fans were saying about Stoutland at the time, D, but it's crazy how many of those coaches, I remember Clint Hurt not being a super popular guy down here, and you see what he's turned into in terms of his career. And I said this a couple of years ago, but he was Mario's first choice to be D coordinator when Mario first got here. That's who Mario wanted to hire, but he was in a very good situation with the Seahawks at the time. He wasn't their DC yet, if I remember correctly, but that's who Mario wanted to hire as D coordinator.
Yeah, he's come a long way.
Which would have been a great hire, obviously.
I wasn't the biggest fan of him when he was D-line coach myself, but he's worked his way up and improved, man. You get, these guys are not, finished products.
My point being, like, it's interesting to see maybe 10, 15 years from now, looking back at some of the coaches the last few years that we have not been too happy with their results, and they may end up turning into good coaches.
Shannon's staff was outstanding. Tommy Robinson coaching the NFL, Wes McGriff coaching the NFL, now with Auburn. Who else did he have? Obviously, Stoutland's as good as it gets. Clint Hurd's the defensive coordinator. Tim Walton was a defensive coordinator in the NFL. I mean, he had a lot of NFL coaches on the staff. Nashville, talk about Leonard Hankerson worked with Mark Duper to get his hands better. That's absolutely right. Hands were his weakness. He worked on them, and maybe that led him to be a coach because he saw how much it helped him, right? What helped him go to that next level. Alec Cohn, where's the good Centennial apparel? Miami Hurricane team store, man. What are you asking about? At MiamiHTS.com, Alec, promo code Insight 20. Just in terms of other teams during this time, I think Florida, go roll up a little bit, Pete. Florida, this was the year where Florida really won the national championship. Pouncey's, Chris Rainey, Joe Hayden, Aaron Hernandez, Carlos Dunlap, Major Wright, which was a loss for Miami here in St. Thomas. Cam Newton was in that class too. Can you imagine if Cam Newton stayed? Thank God that he left. That was one of the happiest moments of my life when Cam Newton transferred, because I knew he was going to be. I know he's going to be what he was, but I knew he was better than Brantley. I'd heard about him from all my Gator friends. You watch the film, you're like, man, this guy's a giant. He's a million times better than Brantley. So when he transferred, it was a sigh of relief. And obviously, I didn't know he was going to do what he ended up doing. But
a planted laptop, right? That's the theory.
Whatever it was, man, it worked, because if this guy was at the Gators, Urban Meyer would have been continuing his run. So the run ended probably when Cam Newton transferred from this class. That's probably when the Gators fell apart, really. No Divine. I know you watched all those highlights going to West Virginia.
That's obviously an early recruiting memory. The YouTube, that was when YouTube was still like the king for highlights, right?
100%. Yeah. Sean David saying OC pick was Pat Nix. And that was as bad as it got. It's true. Pat Nix, now a high school coach, bringing a full. So that was the one where Shannon really messed up on the staff that year. But Nix ended up going back. He's now he was a high school coach for Dalen Upshaw, who signed with Miami last year in Alabama, and his son, of course, Bo Nix, one of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL. Other thing in this era that I wanted to focus on from this class, Butch Davis got Marvin Austin from DC, which was a big loss, going head-to-head with our old coach, now back in the college game at North Carolina in the Coastal, and he got Marvin Austin, who ended up being a second-round pick. Butch signed Akeem Nicks, Jonathan Cooper, Quentin Copels, and Robert Quinn in the years to come. So, I mean, all those were first-round picks. So Butch took what he did at Miami and just transported it to North Carolina in the Coastal. Man, he was such a good evaluator of talent. Shout out Birdstone. Shout out to Streeter and everybody over there at Footballville. Had him on Sunday. That was a great episode. By the way, shout out to Alex Dono. I was on the Dono show before we recorded here. He was nice enough to invite me on there. We had a fun time talking. So shout out to Alex Dono. Check that out. I was on the Locked On Canes on YouTube. If you guys haven't seen it, I recognize a lot of familiar names in the chat. But yeah, man, I mean, all told, this is a good transition class. I like to say, like, biggest disappointment, we talked about Marve. The lesson learned, I think, on this class, Pete, is if you look at the guys that made it, Orlando Franklin and Alan Bailey, you cannot think of two better looking players coming off the bus as far as their size. Adewale Ajomo looked the part in high school. Hankerson was a receiver, but he looked the part at receiver. And then you look at some of the guys that didn't make it, which is going to be like your Lee Chambers, your Jermaine McKenzie's, your Doug Wiggins. They just didn't look like those other guys we're talking about. So I think, at some point, it's important how these guys look coming off the bus. They got to play as well, but you don't underestimate body types. And I think with Mario Cristobal, one big thing you're seeing is that he makes sure that the guys he's getting look the right way off the bus. He's not getting a lot of undersized players. We're talking about Cortez Redding and some guys like that could potentially come in the class as undersized guys. But I think by and large, Mario really focuses on body types. And you saw that in this class with Randy Shannon, that the guys that made it looked the part coming into school.
Sean David said Akeem Nicks was a dog. Him and Brandon Tate, man, that was a nice wide receiver duo. North Carolina always gave us issues. They had that. It was in 04 when they beat us. The kicker who was an NFL, ended up being an NFL kicker. Connor Barth was the kicker.
Yeah, that's right.
And he beat us. And they always just gave us issues. They've always given us problems.
Yeah, but it was just amazing, because you go in this class, and we started with the 2001 class, which was the transition class from Butch to Coker. So you really saw what Butch's classes look like, and it was totally elite. And then it's been a straight downhill till you get to this. This is literally rock bottom. Like, I'm going to do a graph after this where you see some of these numbers on a graph form, and you see the winning percentage and the NFL numbers just plummet under Coker until boom, right here with Shannon, he kind of stops the bleeding and turns it in another direction, not like a super sharp direction, but back up. Butch was so good, and now you see in this time he's doing the same thing in North Carolina.
Yep, without a doubt.
So Jaden Hewitt, who just did an article for us on CanesInSight, shout out to Jaden Hewitt, talking about our schedule, which you can read on CanesInSight for free. He's doing some research on Mario's Oregon teams, and he's saying, I noticed that even if he has undersized guys that are solid, he will make up for with like Markel Bell types, people movers. Yeah, a lot of size on those offensive lines for Mario Cristobal. So that's definitely something that you see when you look at those Oregon teams. I'm looking forward to that article from Jaden Hewitt on CanesInsight.com. 7.5 million posts and counting, free articles. And sign up for free.
All right, Canes fans, keep it locked on CanesInsight all week. We didn't stop all week. We kept it going on through the weekend. Obviously, there was the circumstances of the recruit who did not choose Miami that kept us on there. But camp's approaching, man. So it's only going to keep going, and we're going to keep bringing you guys the content here. So I'm going to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, go to CanesInsight.com as well. Sign up completely free. Go Canes.
Go Canes.